Today we're taking a look at microgesture features with Meta SDK, and most importantly, I would like to answer a specific question. Is microgesture detection on Quest devices very accurate? Well, let me first go through the basics. I would like you to understand the core microgesture components such as the microgesture event source component, microgesture Unity event wrapper, and using the microgesture components with locomotion. Lastly, I'll show you two different prototypes that I built over the past few days by utilizing these cool features. Well, let's jump into my computer and start working on it. If you go to player settings, I want you to double check that you have the XR plugin management installed. And then once you install it, you're gonna see that you have options here for OpenXR. So I have that enabled. And then also do the same thing with OpenXR under the standalone. The Meta XR feature group, that's not gonna show initially because you need to install another component. So let me show you what that is. Go into Window and then Packages. And the package that you're gonna need is going to be the Meta XR Interaction SDK. That's going to install the other components in here, the other packages, the Meta XR Core SDK, and also the SDK Essentials here for the same package. This one is going to be additional, and I'm going to be using this for logging functionality, but I'm going to have that in the description so that you know exactly what you need to get. And then the grid prototype materials, I'm going to be using that for the locomotion scene, so I recommend also getting this asset from the Unity asset store. So once you have that, you're pretty much ready to go with the project. The only thing that I would recommend that you do is go into Meta XR Tools and make sure that you apply all the different suggestions in here. And then the same thing with Android, just make sure that everything is clean. That way the project is going to be ready for you to deploy it, to run it on the Meta link. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and add a couple of building blocks. So I'm gonna go ahead and go into building blocks. And the one that I want to add is going to be pass-through. So just search for pass-through and then just click on this plus symbol here. And you're going to see that it gets added on the right-hand side. I'm also going to be adding the virtual hands because I want to show an overlay of my hands as they're getting tracked in mixed reality. So as soon as you do that, that's what's going to happen. They get added in here as well. So once you get it done, then really you don't need to do the next step that I'm going to show you, but I recommend that you do. The reason for that is because it's going to show visually when you run the microgestures. We're going to be displaying those in a logger. But if you don't want to add my custom logger, that's completely fine. You can also display it on a console. So what I'm going to do here is if we go into General and then Console, we can just go ahead and put this right here. And then we can clear it out. So basically what we're going to implement is we're going to be capturing microgestures, and then they're going to be displayed in the console. Also, if you deploy to the device, they're going to be displaying on my custom logger. If you want to create your own custom logger, you can just create a canvas and then add a text box, and then basically just write to that text box. You can also do that. So what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and add mine in here so that we can see it. So I'm going to go into prefabs and then drag and drop my logger in here. And then if we go here closer, it's gonna be tilted because that's how it is by default, but we can just go ahead and zero out everything. I think I had it at 1 here, and then on the Z-axis, I'm going to put it at 0.25. I think that's good. And then I'm gonna go ahead and offset it a little bit on the X, so negative 0.35. Then we can zero out this guy here. And then for the Y rotation, let's do negative 35. So that way it's going to be on our left side, right in front of the camera. And I think that's everything that we need to do as far as that. So let's go ahead and collapse this right here. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new empty game object. This one I'm going to call Microgesture Listener. And then we can go ahead and zero out everything in here. I'm going to copy the name because I'm going to create a script for that. So if you go under scripts, now we can right click here and then create a mono behavior script. Let's go ahead and paste the name of our script. And now you can go ahead and double click it to open it up. Okay, so we're gonna start by adding a required component here at the very top. The type is going to be OVR microgesture event source. And this is gonna be the component that gets the microgestures from the operating system whenever they're detected with our hands. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and add a new private variable here, and it's going to be exactly that, except that we need to change the name. I don't like the name that AI suggested, so we're just going to go ahead and remove that. Okay, so now we have that. We also need to get that component from the current game object, so let's go ahead and tap here. And then the next thing that you need to do is we need to listen to the gesture recognize event. So let's go ahead and do gesture recognize event, and then we can add a listener here. And then this is going to tell you that it's going to return a microgesture type. So we can say, I'm just going to call it G, and then do greater than, and then we're going to be getting basically an inline method for this. On the other scripts, we're going to be creating our own method instead of just doing something like this inline. That way we can remove it from the ondestroy and we don't have any memory leaks. But for this, I think this is fine. So we can just say spatial logger instance and then log info. And then the information that I'm going to be logging is going to be, we're going to be displaying micro gesture event received G, and it's going to return whether we're doing a swipe forward, a swipe backward, a swipe left, or swipe right. So it's going to help us with that. And then we don't need the update method in here. And then one more thing that I'm going to do though is I want to also display this on the log, because if you don't want to use my logger, then this is also going to work for you. But I'm going to go ahead and refactor this a little bit. And we can say something like message equal, and then that's going to be what we can reuse on these other two methods. And then I'm just going to go ahead and paste that there, and then paste that in here as well. Let's add our microgesture listener, and you're going to see that as soon as I do that, it's going to add the dependency that we added at the very top. So this one is assigned to the left hand. You can also change here and assign it to the right hand. Or you can add another one if you wanted to duplicate these and then assign it to the left hand. Also, that could work with, multiple gestures getting recognized either for the left or the right hand. So it looks like we're good to go. Let's go ahead and test it out. All right, guys, so that was pretty cool. So one thing that I want to show you that you can also do is you don't need to do everything through code. You can also add another component here. Instead of me adding this microgesture listener, you could have added a different wrapper, and that's called the microgesture unity event wrapper. And that's also going to require that we pass in an OVR microgesture event. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag it and drop it in here. And then we can listen to basically any one of these events. So when some of these events are emitted, we're going to be able to do something. So you could basically execute some custom logic in some of your scripts. So you're more than free to handle these events depending on your game or your application. So right now, what I'm going to do though is I'm going to go ahead and tie this to a function or a method. So we need to go ahead and add that. So I'm going to go ahead and cut all these, and I'm going to put this in its own method. So let's go ahead and go here, and then we can say, well, I want to access that method from the microgesture listener, and then we're going to be calling the log microgestures event. Here we can say when tap center. So now we should see two different messages, one executing from the actual microgesture listener, which we had originally, and then also one from this Unity wrapper. So when we do a tap, we're going to see two messages displayed. So let's go ahead and check it out. So what I'll do here is I'll go into building blocks, and then we'll go into, instead of doing pass-through, we're going to be doing just a regular camera rig. So once you do the camera rig, we're going to be able to basically see everything in virtual reality, right? We don't have a pass-through camera. And then the next thing that we'll do though is we're also going to need a teleport. So we can just search for teleport and then just uncheck the core, and then we can just click on add these right here. And then once you do that, it's going to come up with these different options for teleporting. There's an option to do teleporting on a hotspot, nav mesh, or a physical layer blocker. So let's go ahead and keep it in nav mesh. And now you can see that we have a teleport interactable in the view. So I also want to add virtual hands because I like how they look when we do the demo. So let's go ahead and just add that as well. And then as far as the components, I think we're good to go. I am going to change the skyboxing here a little bit. So let's go into window and then rendering, lighting. And then I'm going to go ahead and just remove the actual skybox. And then I'll go and change so go into tracking space and then center eye anchor. And then in here, we can go ahead and just change the look and feel of the environment. So we can just say solid color. And then maybe we'll just change it to be completely white. So now if you go into the game view, everything is going to be white, right? So the next thing that we need to do is make sure that we have the finger feature state associated with the correct hand. Looks like the system does that automatically, but just make sure that it is assigned correctly. Now we need to also populate the finger state thresholds. So to do that, what I'm gonna do though is I'm gonna go ahead and do this pretty quick on each one of the fingers. But you're gonna have to find that under MetaXR interaction, SDK essentials, and then we're gonna go into runtime, and there's gonna be default settings and then post detection. And looks like everything looks good. Thumb, index, and then middle. And then we also have the default finger feature set for the ring and pinky. And yep, that looks good. So now go into window and then AI, navigation, and then let's go ahead and put the panel here next to our project. And then these settings might be a little bit different to you. Just make sure the radius is 0.4, the height is going to be 0.5, step height is going to be 0.01, and then the max slope, I want it to be at 1.3. Your values might be a lot higher because it's not really meant to be for virtual reality or mixed reality, so that's why these values are a little bit smaller. And then we're going to create a new component here, just call it nav mesh surface, and then we can go ahead and zero out everything, and then we'll just go ahead and add a component, and it's going to be of that type. And now when we run and bake it, you're going to see that now we have the nav mesh generated correctly. We're going to start from this area, and then actually what I'm going to do though for this one, we can just move it back a little bit, and I want to show you, like, if you do changes, you can rebake it. Just simply go back into nav mesh surface, and then just go ahead and click on bake, and now everything should be okay. So this section here that it shows you there's no blue, that means that you cannot go into that with locomotion, so it's not going to detect it as a valid locomotion target. Alright guys, so this other demo is something that I built in advance so that I can show you how you can use microgestures with UI. In this case, it's 3D UI because I have a passcode that you have to type, but you won't actually press it. You're going to be using microgestures to be able to navigate, and then when you tap it, you do the microgestures with your thumb to tap. That's when we're going to be entering a number. So we have a save in here, and the way that it's going to work is when it's valid, we're going to be hiding this component here. So let me go ahead and select the right one, and then it's going to show you the gold that we found inside the save. So the way that I set it up though, if you go into this component here, you're going to see multiple events that get exposed. So when the actual passcode is valid, which this is going to be the code, the secret code, then we're going to be executing these different actions. Box_0 is going to be this panel here in the front that we're going to be hiding. We're also going to be basically activating the save unlock message that means that we're going to be saying, okay, you know what? The safe is now unlocked. So we're going to be toggling this and then showing that the safe is unlocked. In the case where the code is valid, we're going to be activating this one, and you're going to basically be able to see that other message. So we go ahead and undo everything. Just make sure that everything is back to normal. And then those are going to be changed based on the different unit events. Also, this has an OVR microgesture event source, which we used previously. So that's how I'm going to be able to get that data, right, from the underlying operating system. So just to give you a quick walkthrough of the code, we have our unit events in here that we're going to be executing, invoking based on the different actions that we do. And then we also have the passcode text, default material, selected material for each one of the different key codes, basically the 3D component that holds the number. And then also here's our private reference to the OVR microgesture event source. I'm also creating an array. Basically, it's going to be columns and actually rows and columns. And then I'm going to keep track of the current row, also the current column. I'm going to be populating all the bounds. That way we can associate all the bounds to the array and based on the name that we have. So the part that is really important in here, though, it's going to be the microgestures, right? So at start, we're going to be setting the passcode text to nothing because we're starting. So we're going to make sure that we basically blank it out. That's going to be the section where the numbers are going to be entered. And then we're going to be binding to our gesture recognize event. So you're going to see that we have that in here. I did it a little bit different in this case because I want to make sure that we remove the listener on destroy. This is an experience, so I wanted to make sure that we didn't have any code leaks. And then if the swipe is forward, we're basically going to be trying to go up, right? And then if the swipe is backward, we're trying to basically go down in terms of a row. And then the column delta and then column delta here is going to stay at that number because we're doing backward and forward. So that means that we're going, up and down. And then on the case of left and right, we're going to be staying at the same row, but we're going to be incrementing and decrementing the value of the column. And then when I do the actual tap, that's when I want to select the actual number that I am on. So you can see here that I'm going to say, okay, what is the game object that is selected? What is the number that is associated with that object? So for this other demo, I wanted to do a gallery, right? So you can see here that I have 3 images that are showing at all times. A little bit of fading on the left and right image. That way we could focus on the actual image. You can also here see how this works. So use a swipe up or down microgesture to move the gallery forward and backward. That way we can bring it closer to us or we can put it further away from us. And then if you do a swipe left or right, that's going to change which image we're showing from the gallery. So one recommendation that I give you is just look at how this is structured. I have a canvas in here, which is basically that main component. I also have a left image, center image, and right image. And if you look at the gallery root, this has a horizontal layout group and also a mask. That way we don't show the images on the left and right. And then if you look at the info panel, that's just an area in here that is going to show you how many images we have and also the help text that I'm showing you in here. And then if we go back into the gallery canvas and I scroll down, this is going to be what does most of the work. This has also an OVR microgesture event source. Again, we're going to be using this data to be able to change which image we have currently selected. So if you look at the image gallery in here, it's pretty basic. So I'm not going to go through everything, but the main part that I want to show you in here is how this is handled when I am recognizing a microgesture. So if you look at it, I'm doing the same thing that I show you on the other example. I am getting the component from the current game object, and I'm also tying myself to the gesture recognize event. And then when that happens, again, this is going to basically cycle through the current index of the images that I have. So if I'm doing swipe left, if I'm doing swipe right, it's going to be updating the gallery. And then if I'm doing swipe forward or backward, we're basically just going to be incrementing the C value of the entire panel. So the detection of microgestures was seamless, to be honest. The safe demo and gallery demo that I just showed you were great. I would say that in some scenarios I kept typing the wrong numbers during a swipe left or swipe right because the system thought that I was doing a tap instead of a swipe. Well, honestly, it worked really well. I am really impressed with the tools. And if you guys have any questions about anything that I show you on microgestures, let me know in the comments below. Also, hit the notification bell, subscribe, and happy XR coding, everyone. Thank you.